All right. Hello everyone. Nice to see some many familiar names here. I would like to welcome you all warmly to this online memorial event we are doing for our dear friend John Evans. Um, ENIL is co-organizing this with Jana Bleckmann-Evans, John's wife. And yeah, it's very nice to see you all. Before we get started, um, just a couple of housekeeping matters as usual on Zoom. We are recording this event, as you can see, um, as a keepsake, basically for the future. If you would not like to appear on the recording, please turn your camera off. We have sign language interpretation, so hopefully you can see that, and if you need it. There are automatic captions available, but you need to activate them. There is a bar at the bottom of your Zoom, and you need to switch closed captions on. If you don't need them, you don't have to switch them on. It's nice. I think many people have switched on their cameras. It's very nice to see you all, not just have black screens, but please do mute yourself so that we don't have any background noise. And the chat is open for your messages, comments, whatever you would like to leave. This is just practical information now. I'd like to hand over to Jana to properly
thank you.
open.
Thank you, Ines, and a very warm welcome from me as well. I'm really, really happy to see all of you joining today's memorial event for John. And I'm sure that he would be just as pleased to see you all attending, friends, colleagues, allies, family, so from various different countries. And it is a very, very emotional occasion. And so I might have to stick a bit to my rules, to my notes here. So please bear with me if I'm a bit glued to the paper at times, just to make sure that I don't forget anything. When Ines suggested to do a joint event to celebrate John's incredible legacy, I immediately agreed, because there's just so much to highlight and to appreciate. And I particularly like that this way we can do it on an international level, because John was very passionate, not just about independent living in the UK, but about the European situation as well, as most of you know, or probably all of you know. And as a consequence, ENIL was particularly close to his heart, and he would feel honored to be at the center of today's celebration. Ines and I decided to pick today as the date for the event, as it is the first anniversary of John's passing. It is good, and I think you all agree, to come together today and look back at John's life and achievements and at the relationships he formed during his life, of which there were plenty very good and long-lasting ones. So thank you all for joining. Thank you to Jamie, Kamil, and Gerry, who kindly agreed to share their thoughts with us during this event. And also thank you to everybody who sent in a tribute to John, either for the memorial website or for the video compilation we will get to watch a little bit later on. And but first, Ines is going to tell you a bit more about the agenda. So please, Ines.
Yes, thank you, Jana. Sorry, we have spent quite a long time with Jana preparing this and thinking how to organize this event. What we will do, we will have a combination of some videos, films, and also some speeches. We will start with a part of an interview that I did with John in 2022, where John is talking about his achievements. We will then have speeches by Jamie Bolling, Kamil, Goungor, and Gerry Zarb. After that, we will listen to all the tributes that many of you have left for John. After that, we will watch a 5-minute video, My Fight for Freedom. After that, we will close the event, and Jana will be reading out a speech by John. So that is the plan for this afternoon, evening, whatever the time is where you are. And just to say, because we don't have, we haven't planned interventions, please do use the chat as much as you would like. So here I turn over to Jana again.
Precious, unique, a very dear friend forever, a mentor. Lovely, positive, kind, always caring. A truly wonderful, generous human being. Fine and wise, an amazing character. The most incredible man, intelligent, charismatic, thoughtful, remarkable. A great inspiration and a fearless campaigner for independent living. A champion with tireless courage, a pioneer, a fighter. Determined, passionate about choice and control, radical, a will of Welsh granite. A man who made a real difference to so many people. These are only some of the words that were used to describe John in the many touching condolence letters and online tributes following his passing. And these messages showed that there are so many people who have a lot to say about John, and that we wouldn't have been able to fit everyone into today's online event without making it last for hours and hours on end. So Ines and I decided to only ask 3 people to speak today. Actually, we had asked 4, but Mira Griffiths unfortunately cannot attend today due to scheduling conflicts. So there's going to be 3 people speaking today, and we asked everybody else to send in a short tribute for the video compilation or for the memorial website. And we both think that this turned out to be a wonderful solution, actually, because it gave more people a chance to contribute. And on top of it, it's just a beautiful, beautiful testimony of how special John was to many, many people. So before we go on to listen to the 3 speakers, we are going and then going to watch the tribute compilation. We would like to show you, as Ines has already mentioned, an extract from an interview that she conducted with John in September 2022 about the roots and the meaning of independent living. And in this part that we picked to show today, John is talking about which achievements were important to him. So if you can please play the video.
Yeah, okay. In terms of achievements, well, without doubt, firstly, it starts with the Project 81, which is the project we started in the late 1970s in this residential home we were living in. That was the younger people who started, younger disabled people. And it was really an alternative, trying to establish an alternative way of living independently in the community. And then, because when we set this up, we did a lot of research and we learned more about independent living. We read a lot. We did a lot of research, looking into what they've been doing California and America. And so it gave us a lot of ideas. And then we were able to use that to meet with other disabled people around the country. And what was interesting was we developed a network of people. And I suppose that was a success as well, a network of people living in about 7 or 8 different parts of the UK. I mean, we have to remember there was no internet in those days, and it was just through word of mouth, through telephone, through written materials from different organizations to save people. So Project 81 was without doubt the first success. The second one was because I was still in the home, but in 1981, which happened to be the United Nations Year to Save People, I raised enough money, enough funds, and got sponsorship to go to America for 6 weeks to do research into independent living. And I decided to do it in a way. I went to go to the West Coast first, to Berkeley, California, where it all started, to see how, the Californian kind of version. And then I went to St. Louis in Missouri, which is in the Midwest, to see, what kind of way they did it there. And then I went down to New Mexico, which is where I broke my neck, because that was in the South. And also it was one of the poorest states. So, they were obviously going to have different challenges there. And then finally end up in Boston, on the East Coast. So I had a good kind of idea about the different ways they went, In California, they were freer. In Boston, they were more business-like. In St. Louis, they were, again, more business-like. And had the free kind of Berkeley, California type approach. And then in Albuquerque, they were really struggling because, they weren't getting the kind of funding the others were. So that was a big success. And then finally, the third one would be, without doubt, me moving out of the institution, which was the big one in a sense, because it absolutely transformed my life. And it was like almost taking a drug, because then suddenly I was in my own home, sleeping and living and doing back to the life where I was before I went into the residential home. So that was a huge success. But it took 4.5 years to achieve that, It was painful going through all that time, knowing I could do it, but we had to go through all the red tape and convince the authorities that to do it, because nobody could believe that somebody who had 24/7 support needs would be able to do that. And we were accused of all kinds of things, like using the money for drugs and gambling and drinking and all sorts of other things. But we told them, well, that would be stupid, because, if we did that, then we couldn't survive. And then another treatment was setting up the first centre for independent living in the UK, which was in Hampshire. That was a local centre. And then, as a result of that, we not only developed a network in the UK, but then we developed a wider network of people in Europe, and also some contacts in America with different people. And in 1989, we all converged in Strasbourg at the European Parliament, and that's where ENIL was formed. And so that was, really quite a kind of life-changing event. And, it was amazing how I don't think the European Parliament had ever had anything like that happening, when, most of us all had our PAs with us, our personal assistants. And it was quite an experience, but it started that whole thing off. Then when we came back to the UK, there were 6 British people who went there. And when we came back to the UK, we decided we had to do something similar in the UK. In other words, try and find a national representative body. And we did it through the national organization called BCODP, the British Council of Disabled People. And we set up an independent living group, or independent living committee, we called it at the time. So it would fit into the structures of this organization. So those were the 5 people, and then we brought other people in, other friends, like, Baroness Jane Campbell, and Rachel Hurst, and a whole lot of others to join us. So, and then one of the 2 first pieces of work we wanted to do, or wanted to achieve, was to get the legislation, so that not only could we have our independent living in our own homes, but other people could have it right around the country. Because at that time, there were only sort of about 7 different authorities that were doing it, because a lot were afraid, because it was basically illegal in the British legal interpretation of what people could have, because it said that the social care system could not pay an individual money, but only one could only get it through the benefit system, So we had this kind of loophole, how we would do it, and we did it through a third party by a holding organization, a charity, or a disabled people's organization, and that's how we managed to overcome it. But then the other success we had really was setting up the National Centre for Independent Living. That was the second, as well as getting the Direct Payments Act being our main objective, which came out in 1996, which was about 4 or 5 years later after we started. So, that was quite a fast piece of, movement, because we had, lots of politicians and influential people, directors of social services, and people, leaders of unions and things like that behind us, supporting us. So that was quite good. So then the National Centre for Independent Living also got set up that same year, 1996, when the Direct Payments Act became law. It was in 1995, it kind of went through Parliament and was accepted, but it was the following year. So, having a National Centre for Independent Living meant that we had an overarching organization that would support all these different independent living groups and centres for independent living around the country that were then developing. And I think I think that's probably, I could go on with other successes. But I would mention one other, was the ENIL Freedom Drive. That was in 2003. That was when I was the chair or the president of ENIL, and it was the idea of one of our Irish colleagues, Martin Naughton, and a whole group of us, about 6 or 7 of us, worked on setting up the first ENIL Freedom Drive in Strasbourg, which has now become, an event that happens every 2 years that ENIL still organizes and still, has the same objectives of trying to keep, personal assistance and independent living on the agenda at the level of the European Parliament and the Commission, which was great, and that is still going. So I think, I could say more, but I think that's enough of the real successes we had, which, transformed not just my life, but thousands of other disabled people's lives.
Okay, so that was John. It was always wonderful speaking to John. And I'm glad we have this and some other recordings with John so we can hear him again. And sadly, this will be the first Freedom Drive in September that where John won't be present, either in person or online. So now after this video, we will hear from some friends, colleagues of John. So we will start with Jamie Bolling, and then I can present the others, but I will let all of them introduce themselves. But Jamie, you are the first, so please go ahead.
Yes, let's see my phone, my mic's on. Thank you, Ines, and my condolences, Jana. Always after a film that I get upset. Anyway, it's fantastic and an honor to be able to speak today. to John, one of our great pioneers for the independent living movement. My name is Jamie Bolling. I've been a friend of John's since 1994. I'm now the co-chair of the European Network for Independent Living, and I'm the chair of the Independent Living Institute in Stockholm. As for John, I think independent living is my life, with my family and friends, of course. It was hard to lose John when he passed last year. He was a great mentor, friend, and fellow activist. As Jana mentioned in her description words, he was active in the movement a long time and one of the founding members of the European Network on Independent Living, which has been very important for myself as well. They founded, as we heard, in Strasbourg back in 1989, and then after that, I think Adolf was the first president, and then John was the president for a number of years. Having the memorial today, marking 1 year ago since John left us when he died after a long battle with cancer, is very fantastic. I'm glad to be able to be here. John didn't give up easily. The doctors told him that he would not live as long as he did. I kept waiting and thinking, oh, he's going to go, he's going to. But he fought. He fought a long time for himself, for his wife, Jana, and for the independent living movement, and for us. Even when he was sick, I still called him for advice. I did a great interview with him. I'm thinking now, what a pity I didn't put the record button on that one. It was just a few months before, on Centers for Independent Living. And he gave me good, valuable information at that time on the history of CILs and how to start them, how they work. As there was still the organization in Stockholm was and is considering, and we'll be starting a Center of Independent Living now this spring, finally. John was one of our great and tireless advocates for independent living, for personal assistance, peer support, empowerment, accessibility, all the other independent living pillars. He was a source of information, of inspiration for many of us. The first time I met him was at a European Network meeting in the UK. It would have been, I think, 94, but mid-90s. We were a gang who rode a luxury train for a meeting across the street from an IRA prison somewhere in the north. I don't remember the name of the town. I don't usually put those kind of details on my brain. But there was a lot of great people sharing their experience on independent living, as John was doing. I do remember this plush red velvet interior of that train. I think it was some sort of a royal train that had been commissioned. An accessible one. It was difficult with accessibility at the time. It was exciting to meet John and to learn about the work that he had carried out, and to meet Baroness Jane Campbell, who was also there at that meeting, and all the different peoples who were there talking about disability, their disability, independent living, and strategies to change our lives. I was new at the European Network at that time. I had met Adolf, was working with Adolf Ratzke in Sweden. So my ears were hot to hear more about independent living. I realized also then how important it was, the sharing of stories on how everyone was supporting one another and learning from one another to carry out our work to increase independent living in our respective countries. These stories and this empowerment built our movement. Hearing John speak now, I realize that the legislation in the UK was from 95. The Swedish legislation was 94. I'm sure there was a lot of discussion going on about how to form these legislations. And I had that question in my mind this morning, so it was good. Now I have the date of that. I was inspired on how John, like others, had gone to the States to meet Ed Roberts and Judy Heumann, to visit Berkeley and the CIL there. His commitment was catching, to learn how he and his friends fought to get out of the institution, how they worked to see the establishment of the CILs in the UK cities. Hampshire was the first one, and I heard there was many before. We exchanged strategies in the situation in our different countries in which we lived, and planned for more change for better lives for ourselves, our brothers and sisters around Europe and in the world. John wanted to see a world where rights were a part of everyday life. He was working hard for independent living way before the UN Convention was thought of. There were many meetings after that one in in London, the UK. I always looked forward to those meetings. They were on personal assistance and other issues. I learned so many things. I remember one meeting in Italy after they had gained their legislation for personal assistance, where Adolf, John, Bente Skansgårds for Norway shared important strategies for the Italian activists on the implementation of the PA legislations that had been developed. Then we met in Sofia, Bulgaria with Kapka Panayotova, also to talk about awareness raising of independent living, personal assistance, closing the institutions. There were many other places. John took contact with me when, as a board member, EDF had a board meeting in Stockholm, and as a member he was there, and he always had time for a beer, a chat, and a laugh. I remember a meeting in Berlin in 1994, I think it was. It was a fun meeting. We had all rode this accessible bus together, which impressed me. We did not have accessible buses in Stockholm at the time. And that evening, then we all gathered around to talk, have music, have fun. The movement's been always about working hard, but also having fun and talking with our friends and growing closer to our friends. Adolf Ratzke was there alongside John, Kapka, Bente. They all helped me to grow in independent living. John's practical experience was refreshing, how he showed the practicality of how independent living worked and how it was possible, how he and others could move out of these institutions. I luckily was never put in an institution, at least not yet, thanks to John and others, how they set up the CILs. I marvel that his and his friends' success in having set up CILs in different cities in the UK. As I said, we will now have one in Sweden. I longed for one for Sweden and will now have it. John was not only a role model for me, but for a countless number of individuals within the movement. His dedication, commitment, and efforts have improved many of our lives. John's passion and enthusiasm were bubbling. He saw the unique talents in his fellow activists and acted for the empowerment of those around him. I will remember him for his unwavering commitment for equality, for justice, for his work within ENIL that helped to build ENIL into the strong organization that it is today. His legacy lives on through the work that ENIL continues to do today. John was among those who worked hard to have ENIL to become a more formal organization. It was an informal network in the beginning, but to build it into a formal network along with Adolf, so that as an established organization, we would be able to have more doors that would open for us, for ENIL. He saw the membership in EDF being important to strengthen ENIL, helping ENIL to have the voice that we have and be respected for the movement that we are. In 2009, when I became the director of ENIL, John was one of the first to congratulate me, wishing me success at the job. Soon after starting together, John, Ines, and I, we went to meet the EU commissioner at the commission. I was very nervous. This was big time for me. And he was the one that was responsible for disability issues and the work that was funded by the European Union to ENIL. So John was an important mentor for me, helping me to know how to deal with these officials at the commission, what to say, how to treat them. And at the EU Parliament, he guided me to know what meetings were important to have, which MEPs I should try to meet, and what kind of support I could ask for ENIL. John was there not only to support, but also for visionary ideas in the development of ENIL. John's support was important for me in becoming the leader that I have become. I learned too from John at the Freedom Drive, which he talked about, how he worked politically and with the movement, and with people, politicians, and also with the movement. He introduced me to many people. As ENIL and independent living members, we have a bond with our fellow activists. We become this big family. And John helped my family to grow, my ENIL family to grow, as he introduced me to so many people. And I saw how everyone supports one another during the hard times, and we rejoice together when we have successes. I remember also when a group of us made a visit to the CIL to Hampshire, to meet John and to learn from his experience. It was I think it was an activity in the EU project that we had at the time. We wanted to learn more from John. We saw how his humility and diplomacy were important for independent living so that it could grow in the UK and also in other EU countries. We saw the important work that CILs can carry out. John's support through the years was important not only for me, but for Kapka in Bulgaria in raising awareness on independent living, on personal assistance, accessibility, deinstitutionalization. John was a key actor for Elena and Claudia in Slovenia when they were planning for their new law on personal assistance. He was a great inspiration for Gerdinand in Serbia. Gerdinand, who had moved to Ireland to come from the Balkan War, to get away from the war, was able to meet Martin Naughton, who he talked about, and also John, to be able to come back to raise awareness on independent living in Serbia after the war. Then there's been to Skansgård in Norway. I remember one trip we were going to Portugal, and John and Kapka were there. It was a Horizon meeting somewhere in the mid-90s, and they were there lobbying strongly for independent living. And Bente said that Adolf and John were two of her greatest mentors for building up independent living in Norway. I will conclude now by saying, John, you're missed. I would have needed to call you again and again. Questions on CILs and other things, but you're no longer there to answer the phone. May you rest in peace, in power, John. Sorry for the tears.
Thank you very much, Jamie. To all try not to cry when you cry. But it was a very nice tribute to John. It was great to hear about all the meetings where you've been together, and of course all the people as well. I will hand over to my colleague from ENIL, my younger colleague from ENIL, Kamil, because John was also an inspiration to many young people and is an inspiration still. Kamil, you are somewhere here, so please switch your... Oh, yes, Christos will spotlight you. Go ahead, please.
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. So hello everyone, and thank you for having me here. It's an honor. Indeed, I work at ENIL. My name is Kamil Goungor. I am connecting from Greece. So John had friends everywhere and was famous everywhere. Indeed, as Ines said, John was also a role model for us, for young generation. I was not that close to John in terms like many of you are, probably because I was living in the other part of the continent and because it's a different generation. But I have met him a few times in person and also online. And it was always the feeling you had, it was always that, we know each other. And I never felt nervous next to John or uneasy, even though I knew who John was and, all his achievements. Have watched his videos, interviews. He spoke to us many times. John had always this way to make you feel comfortable. He treated you like an equal speaker. He was paying attention to what you were saying. He didn't treat you like a newbie, like you listen and sit and I will teach you everything. He didn't have this attitude. So I really appreciate that. And, you want to be next to people, who think, you are equal and, he sees something in you. He paid attention to what you said and, these things I remember. He was also very open to speak about himself, about, his experiences, and he gave advices, which were very helpful for us. And his memory was great. I mean, you know that better than me, which was very helpful. Yeah, what else? John was, when it comes to his character, I think he was also very calm, very humane. And as someone said in one of these videos I don't even remember when I saw it, but it was something I fully agree, that he was never hostile, at least to whenever I met him, and I heard his activism. He had a way to approach things in a very polite, maybe polite is not the correct word, but in a very I think Jamie said earlier, diplomatic word, in a diplomatic way, and this win also your co-speakers, and this is the way that I try to do for myself when I try to do advocacy. It doesn't. I try to do the John way. I remember he spoke to our team some years ago. Unfortunately, we don't have the recording because it was kind of internal meeting. He was our guest and he spoke to our staff. But I remember that I enjoyed the whole meeting, and I was not bored even for a second. I didn't, because I was joining online, I didn't disconnect, like to see other pages, which is something I do sometimes. Don't tell to Ines, she is my boss. It's good to not tell her the stuff. But with John, it was never kind of boring. So it was always nice to have him around. And as I said, he was not a random guy, but someone that with this, as we saw in the video with the project 81, he managed to, together with others, of course, to leave this residential setting and to make a change in UK and to change the life of many people, not only in UK but also beyond, in different countries. And the first CIN came later. The ENIL was created thanks to John and some other people. So in a way, the fact that I am here today, the fact that I am able to support my family and to live a good life and many others is thanks to John, among other great pioneers. Some of these people that also Jamie mentioned, together with Adolf, with Martin, with Kapka, with Kalle, and with Peter, from Belgium, and many others. Their impact and his impact was huge to our life and life-changing. For the Freedom Drive, for example, he spoke up I think it was in this interview with Ines that we saw the part. He mentioned in this, I think it was in the same video, and I will be coming a few times today to this video interview because it's very good and it's good to watch it all at some point when you have time. He said about the Freedom Drive that it has this unifying factor, the companionship you feel when you participate in Freedom Drive. I mean, I joined ENIL and the movement thanks to Freedom Drive, which was created by all these people and by John as well. And this is what motivates us at ENIL to make again a great Freedom Drive that will live to the, which we have this year, and we live to the expectation of John and of all of these people who fought to make it happen. I don't want to take a lot of time. I have a few more things here noted. I think that again, in the same interview with Ines, John said that things didn't go as far as he would like to because of government changes and a lot of things. I feel that as a youth generation, it is our duty to fight for that and to continue. And this is what we try also to do at ENIL, but also personally, to continue, this legacy of John, of Adolf, and of all the other people we mentioned, for ourselves, but also for our peers. And as John said, it's important to find new champions. And I mean, he was saying many great things that stay to me. He emphasized the importance of peer support, which is really important. The importance of role models. He was one of them, definitely. He spoke a lot about co-production, which is something we also try to do at ENIL and to bring it, more and more to the discussion. And that we shouldn't be complacent and we need to continue campaigning and fighting. Or as he said, I think, firefighting. I like that. He was talking about engaging youth in the movement, which we try a lot. I worked at ENIL a lot with the young people. And I think we don't see the same urgency in the young generation because things are good and many things are better because the others fought for it. But this is because John and others did it. But we need to continue because, as we know, and as also Jamie has said in another occasion, things can get lost very quickly if we don't continue. So this is something John was also emphasizing. Yeah, and John, I mean, and I'm coming to the end. Sorry if I talk too much. John didn't achieve all these things by himself. I mean, he was leading in many cases, but he did it with others as well, and he was always acknowledging that and showing it. And he was showing it always with his commitment also to ENIL and to our movement. He was always there. He was considering our work important and supported it. So for me, it was a true role model. I will close with two things he said, and I will always, I think, remember. One is that when he one is from this video, and when he moved to after this institution to living on his own, and he, if I understand well, I'm not famous for my memory, he said that moving on my own was like taking a drug, which I think is a very strong statement, which non-disabled people cannot understand sometimes. But for us, it's a very strong statement how important it is and how, in a way, crazy it is to be able to just move on our own, So for me, I even use it when I do some speeches. Sometimes I use this phrase. I think it gives very well the importance for us, for the independent living. And yeah, I will close the session, and not the session, my intervention, with saying something again John said to Ines in this interview, that I remain optimistic. I do the same as Kamil. And as John said, it's not the end. We are far from it. So thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. And yeah, John, rest in power, and give greetings to the others.
Thank you, Kamil. Thank you. That was very nice. Yeah, let's move on to our last, but not least speaker, and that is Gerry Zarb. If we could bring him in, I will let Gerry introduce himself. If you could spotlight him, Christos, as well, so we can see him. I hope he is here. Yes, I can see his name.
He's here.
Oh, there we go. You are muted for the moment, Gerry. Okay.
Wasn't very clever, was it? There, right.
Much better when we can hear you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Gerry Zarb. I'm retired now, but in the past I worked as a researcher and a policy analyst at the Disability Rights Commission in the UK. For the last 10 years of my working life, I worked at a centre for independent living in Hampshire, where John lived. I helped out with lots of different things from time to time, but my main job was bringing in the money so that the CIL could continue to support disabled people. I first met John in my memory is terrible, but I think it was either 1986 or early 1987. Anyway, it was nearly 40 years ago. I just started my first job after leaving university, working with Mike Oliver, who wanted me to meet some of the most important people in the disability movements. Now, the first was Vic Finkelstein, which was quite a scary experience. And if you knew Vic, you'll know what I mean. But it couldn't have been more different when I first met John. It was in a pub somewhere in Hampshire, and he was with Philip Mason and Neil Slatter. And I remember it was a very relaxed and convivial atmosphere, just as it was every time I've met John ever since then. Now, in those early years, both Philip and John were a great source of advice and inspiration, and set me off on a long journey working on independent living, with John often either by my side or in the background. And he remained a big support for all that time. Now, while John was quietly inspirational, what I actually remember most is his practical common sense. Whenever there was a problem or obstacle, he'd always talk it through calmly and thoughtfully and try to work out the best way to deal with it. There was never any hand-wringing or histrionics of any kind, just a quiet determination to keep moving forward. Now, I've always been attracted to calm people, and tend to steer well clear of excitable types. So we always worked well together and soon became good friends as well. And he also helped me a lot with making a success of my career, in particular when he commissioned me on behalf of the British Council of Disabled People to carry out research on the cost benefits of direct payments. And that turned out to be a very important piece of work, which played a part in persuading the UK government to introduce legislation making direct payments available to all. I've always been incredibly grateful to be given that opportunity to leave a small mark on the world after I've gone. And it probably wouldn't have happened without John. Now, John could be quite steely when he needed to be, and he had a knack of getting people to do things that maybe they didn't completely want to. I'll never forget the time when he persuaded me to do a live television news interview when we were in Dublin. And I was a complete bag of nerves, and it was all John and the producer could do to get me into the studio. But John kept telling me it would be all right. And like a fool, I believed him. Now, in many ways, I think John was like a glacier. He often appeared to be moving very slowly, but with enormous force. It was a very good trick, and it won him a lot of admirers. Now, to disabled people in the independent living movement, John was, of course, a hero and a massive source of inspiration. But while you never forget that completely, it wasn't what defined him as a friend or as a man. Not to me, anyway. To me, he was just John, amiable, quietly funny, always interesting, and just excellent company. In fact, over the years, independent living was something that we talked about less and less. John had a lively and inquiring mind, and topics of conversation were very wide-ranging, although we would usually start off invariably with a quick roundup of the state of the world and a sprinkling of sports news. We used to meet up for lunch regularly over the years, and it was something that I always looked forward to. I still haven't really got quite used to the idea that we aren't going to do that anymore, but I do know that I'll miss him very much, and I think about him very often. Now, after nearly 40 years, I obviously have a lot of memories about John, but one of the strongest was actually from after he had left us. I was very honoured and privileged to be invited to join Jana and John's family when they spread John's ashes in May last year. And the plan was to spread the ashes at dawn on his birthday at one of his favourite spots, which was a cliff top near Rosili in South Wales. Now, I'd never done that before, and as I hate funerals, I assumed I wouldn't particularly enjoy it, although I absolutely wanted to be there anyway. As it turned out, it was a very special and in some ways positive experience. We had to get up, though, at an ungodly hour of 2:45 in the morning to drive over to Rosilly. And when we got there, it was obviously dark and very windy and cold, as we huddled on the cliff top waiting for the sun to come up. And afterwards, we had champagne and strawberries that some of John's family had brought along. And it created a very warm and, as I say, almost positive atmosphere. And as I watched John's ashes blowing away over the Atlantic, I thought that that was very fitting for such a free spirit as John was. And somehow it just felt right. So that is an image and a memory that I know is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. And I think I'm going to end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gerry. That was really nice to hear that. So thank you to all three of you. Now we will watch the video that we talked about with more tributes to John. Now we all had a challenge of being very short here, so it will be slightly different. But let me play this. I'm really looking forward to seeing this too. And I will just play it without any more commentary. There we go.
Good afternoon. My name's Tony Hunter, previous Chief Executive of the Social Care Institute for Excellence, which is where I knew John. One word I'd always associate him with is integrity. The help he gave us at Sky in focusing inwardly on what co-production would mean and then transferring that learning to the outside environment in consultancy projects was incredible. Always an understated man, but actually very, very powerful. Incredible impact. Miss him greatly.
Hi, I'm David Ashley. John has always been a prominent figure in my professional life. We crossed paths regularly and later became friends who would check in with one another from time to time. John's story demonstrates that you need to have conviction and be brave if you want to affect change and make things better for you and those that follow. Paving the way for the lawful use of direct payments, John pursued a course that required him and others to break the law to demonstrate how much better things could be. He managed to do this with grace and poise, and in my mind, this makes him a true hero. Thanks, John.
When I think of John, the first thing that comes to mind is his unwavering commitment to disability rights. He was steadfast in his campaigning and uncompromising in his defense of justice for disabled people. John never shied away from speaking truth to power, and he never watered down his message. Yet, what made him truly remarkable was that he combined this fierce determination with a warmth and affability that drew people to him, even those we might have considered our political foes. He showed that it was possible to be principled without being hostile, and that made him not just respected, but deeply admired. For me, John was more than just a campaigner. He was a shining example of what really mattered: integrity, courage, and compassion. He taught me so much about what disability leadership should look like, not in an abstract way, but through the way he lived and led every day. From him, I learned how to make the case for our rights with conviction and dignity, and how to carry that responsibility with generosity of spirit. These lessons continue to guide me to this day, and I know they always will. John was also a friend. Naturally, his absence is felt the most by his family and the wider movement, which has lost one of its brightest lights, but also in my own life too. There are very few people like John, and the space he has left behind is vast. He is sorely missed, not just for his leadership and his voice, but for his kindness, his humor, and the quiet strength he gave to those of us fortunate enough to call him a friend. Ossie Stewart.
Hi, I'm Catherine Marsden and I'm the Chief Executive at Sky, the Social Care Institute for Excellence. And I first met John when I first became Chief Executive at Sky during lockdown, where John was the chair of our co-production steering group. And he had a huge influence on what we did at Sky. And I think for me, one of the best things about John was his absolute passion, his dedication and his resilience and his and his determination to make everybody listen and learn and understand why co-production is so important. And for that, I'll be very grateful to him.
Just about a quarter of a century relationship with John. He is greatly missed from my life. This last picture of us burned into my mind forever, as I would have never imagined he'll be gone in less than 3 months after this shot was taken back in October 2024 at the George in Petersfield. I first met him in 2000 as becoming his PA, and during the time we become friends. Many travelings, journeys, and mutual memories will be with me all my life. He taught me how to balance between too much and too little in all fields of life. Not to overdo or underdo anything in life. This approach is transferred to many areas into my life and taught me how to cope with the difficulties in a mediocre way. Thank you, John. Richie.
When I think of John, I think of someone with a very calm exterior, but still resolved. John managed to balance out being calm with being unrelenting in following his values and beliefs. John was very unassuming. When I started working with him at the age of 18, I had no idea who he was, what he had done for the movement and for disabled people. As I got to know John and hear about his work, I was amazed at what he had achieved. Zara.
What I learned from John was that your own story matters, also that brown rice and cranberry juice are good for you. Anit, from March 1992, from a visit to John's family in South Wales, either taken on the Gower or close by. From June 1996, where I supported John to attend an ENIL conference in Stockholm. We stayed at Adolf's house some of the time, as did Phil and Virginia.
I used to regularly talk to John about my walks around the neighbourhood. So I'd come to this little copse on the edge of the beautiful city of Sheffield to listen to the bird song and think about John. I'm thinking it would be really nice to sit outside the Earl of March, looking over the village green and beyond the River Lavant to the Trundle. Goodbye, John. It's good to have known you.
I first met John in Brixton sometime in the mid-1990s. I was working for the UK Advocacy Network, which was a national user survivor-controlled mental health organisation based in Sheffield, and I'd gone down to London to meet a group of people from the National Centre for Independent Living. I feel that John lived in the spirit of all for one, one for all, and in my eyes the best thing about him was his commitment to collective endeavour. Patrick Wood.
I met John when I was 26 years old, so 28 years ago, he was delivering a workshop on independent living and the independent living movement. The passion and determination John spoke with just captured me and provoked a career change in me. Living and working in Hampshire, I have been lucky enough to work alongside John and benefit from his wealth of knowledge and learn from his pragmatic, persuasive style. I believe being mentored by John has given me the confidence to become a disability equality consultant in my own right and trainer despite having a severe speech impairment. To a large extent, this is due to John's patience and mentoring. Ian Speed, Managing Director of All Inclusive CIC, October 2025.
Hello, I'm Gerry Zarb. I first met John nearly 40 years ago when I first started working in disability. The best thing about John was his practical common sense. Whenever there was a problem or obstacle, he would always talk it through calmly and work out the best way to deal with it. In many ways, John was like a glacier, often appearing to be moving very slowly, but with enormous force. Most of all, to me, he was just my friend John. Amiable, quietly funny, always interesting, and just excellent company.
At the heart of everything John did was humanity.
He spoke of independent living not as a policy fix but as a basic human right. He built organizations, chaired boards, advised governments, but he never lost sight of the people those structures were meant to serve. He made space for new leaders, shared knowledge freely, and stayed approachable even as his reputation grew. Tony Baldwin's son.
I'm Jana, John's wife. One of the many things I loved about John is how he supported others on their way, often making their goals as important to him as his own. To me, the reasons for this were his genuine interest in others and his firm belief in creating bonds and in being in this together. This is part of what made him such a passionate advocate for personalization and co-production. In my first ever email to John, I wrote, "If only there were more people like you in this world, it would sure make it a better place." I still think this is true. Even more so now, actually, after having been the woman by his side for almost a decade. You might not have bragged about your achievements, John, but I can as your proud wife. You were one exceptional man, and I miss you.
John Evans attended our protest in 2008, urging the state to provide personal assistance and systematically regulate their right to independent living. He joined us on a march through Ljubljana, but when he arrived at the hotel room, he was met at the reception with a large envelope containing pictures from the protest he had participated in and a controversial YHD study. In this way, he practically experienced the power and methods of operation of the National Council of Disability Organizations in Slovenia. Elena Pekaric, YHD Slovenia.
Hi, I'm Ute. I started working for John when I was 21. This was in 2000, and we quickly became friends. John taught me that I have to make the most of my life by overcoming barriers, by contributing with my own convictions, and by enjoying my life with food, drinks, wine, music, and poetry. And we did that together a lot.
I'm Rose, and though I later learned of John's achievements, I first knew him as a neighbour when I moved into Grange Road about 11 years ago, and a good neighbour. For example, when I told him I was going to host a couple of language students in the room above his bedroom, he didn't see that as a potential nuisance, but rather a good opportunity for the girls and something good that an organisation in our town was doing. That was typical.
In 1981, I accompanied John on an independent living research trip to the United States. The trip instilled great hope for the future. During 6 weeks, we experienced effects from the independent living movement everywhere. We visited 4 states and a number of CILs and met up with a lot of people. We took part in a demonstration in San Francisco, visited Ed Roberts in Sacramento, and Judith Heumann in her house on the hills of Oakland. Visiting John's former home in the northern part of New Mexico, and meeting his old friends was very emotional for both of us. An amazing and encouraging trip. The dream of possibilities for independent living became real and within reach. Thanks for inviting me. Love from Jana Slorg.
John, you are missed. A year since you left us. I knew your health was difficult, but I'd hoped you would keep on for more years to come, as you'd been doing in spite of your progressive health deterioration. John was a great leader, a tireless advocate for personal assistance, and a source of inspiration to many of us. He served as a role model, one of my role models. His dedication and efforts improved the lives of many of us.
On a personal note, The first thing I think of when I think of John is his kind and thoughtful nature. Regardless of what was happening in his life, John always found time to ask after me and my family and was genuinely interested in me as a person. I valued John's friendship very much and was honored to have played a very small part in his incredible journey. I often think of John with a smile. He is missed by so very many people. Lara Blake, Head of Business Development, All Age Continuing Care, Hampshire and IOW Integrated Care Board.
Stephen Palmer here. So this is ironic because every year for co-production week, John used to send me a video which I then uploaded to the website. John's video would be an introduction to the week, which puts the contribution of people with lived experience at the heart of decisions made about their lives. And here I am making a video about John. Now, I hope there's music at the event. When we'd start a meeting, John and I would always spend a minute or two talking about music. He'd often give me suggestions from bands from the 1970s that I perhaps hadn't even heard of. And, I wish I had a video of one of those conversations. Have a fantastic celebration.
Dear Jana and dear everybody, thank you for inviting me to give this contribution to John's memories. I met John way back in 1983, and I met him at the time where he achieved the moment for moving out from Lee Court. And that was a very special time. I remember it clearly. And John, he has always been hardworking, and most of the times he got what he wanted. Not in a very loud way, but he was working quietly and determined. I will remember a lot of things. At that time it was hard working, but it was also very nice to be there. It was a very special time when he moved out and slept for the first night at Grange Road. I will also remember a lot of other things. I remember special. I remember going down to Horndean for a can of HSB together with John and sometimes other people. Michael Good, for example. That was very nice. So I got all the best memories for John. It was so nice and I miss him very much.
My name's Pete Fleischman, and I knew John for over 20 years as a friend and as a colleague. The way John was able to be incredibly gentle, supremely practical, and fiercely principled has had a lasting impact on me. Every time I see someone being kind, I remember John. Every time a group of disabled people reaches a consensus and goes a little way forward, I remember John. And every time a disabled person asserts their right to equality, I remember John.
John made anything seem possible. Christy.
I'm Frances. I met John in 1980, and for more than 40 years we worked together, we campaigned together, and we hung out together and had fun. So in celebrating John, I wanted to highlight his achievement in bringing the idea of direct payments to the UK. He found allies and he worked to ensure that it's now a mainstream part of social care in the UK. It's such a profound change, and John was a tireless champion of the change. Working with him on it was just so rewarding, and best of all, being his friend was a deep joy.
I'm Catherine Wilton, and I knew John through my work at the Department of Health and later NHS England, where we collaborated on leadership development programmes and masterclasses. We were trying to create the conditions for personalisation and independent living to happen for more people. All our work together over the last 16 years was about growing allies and developing leaders so that more people feel empowered to lead change. We became friends as well as colleagues, and John always provided me with so much support and encouragement. And as fellow Welsh people, we love to talk politics and celebrate or drown our sorrows about the rugby whenever we met in person. I miss him every day.
Dame Philippa Russell and her son Simon at Hyannisport, the New England home of the Kennedy family. At Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy's 100th birthday party in July 1990. Like so many others, I mourn the loss of a great man. John inspired me, and Simon, my disabled son over many decades, and the independent living movement could never have happened without him. Simon was born into a world where institutionalization was thought kind, and where nobody believed that ordinary lives were possible. John challenged those negative expectations. In fact, he lived a life which was much more than ordinary. It was gloriously extraordinary, and he challenged so many anxiously negative expectations about disabled people as citizens first, talented, creative, and longing for the adventures and opportunities that the rest of us take for granted. I know how courageous John has been with his last years of ill health, but always a source of energy, vision, and always with the all-important time to share his wisdom with others. He will be so much missed, but his legacy lives on. Dame Philippa Russell, October 2025.
John's life and my life connected together for over 40 years. Putting so much time into so few words is not straightforward. We worked together, lived together, traveled together, danced together, argued together, saw friends and stayed with family, listened to music, cooked, watched football, and saw every hour of the clock and all the seasons. There are many, many memories, but one huge feeling. It has been such a treat to have known him. Martin.
My name is Ines Bulic, and I work for the European Network on Independent Living. I was lucky to have met John in 2005, so 20 years ago when I first started working in disability rights. Even though John was assigned to supervise me at first, he became a really good friend over the years. One thing that I'm grateful to John for is when I moved to England in 2008, John had really helped me get set up. He made sure I wasn't isolated. He made sure that I met many great people. And yeah, I feel really lucky to have known John, and I miss him, but I'm proud and privileged to have known him.
My name is Vidk Mary Melstrom. I am one of the founders of Uloba, Independent Living Norway. I have had the honor of crossing paths with some remarkable individuals, but few have left as profound a mark as John Daniel Evans. Reflecting on John's life and work, I am filled with gratitude for his leadership, his friendship, and the indelible impact he has had on my own journey. John has not only shaped the trajectory of the independent living movement, he has shaped the lives of all who have had the privilege to know him. His legacy is alive in the freedoms we have won, the communities we have built, and in the ongoing struggle for equality that he inspired us all to carry forward. Thank you, John, for showing us what true dedication, vision, and humanity look like. Your example continues to light the way.
Hi, I'm Sybil, and I know John for about 15 years. I met him through Social Care Institute for Excellence, and from when I first met him, I thought, wow, what an amazing person. He's had so much impact. He's grown through his own challenges, and if it wasn't for him, like, a lot of people's lives would be very different. So amazing.
Hi, my name's Russ, and I'm a filmmaker, and I knew John for 15 years, I think. Filmed him a couple of times, which was always great. John, the first thing I think about when I think about John is compassion, strength. He was a very strong man. and really, really cared about people. And I think those are two wonderful, wonderful things to remember him by.
Wow. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to continue now. So I cannot thank the contributors enough for doing their part in making this happen. I just find this compilation so very special. And I also think that you, Christos, did a wonderful job editing it. So thank you so very much for that as well. That's just gonna stay a remarkable piece of memory, I think. The same gratitude goes to Sybil and Russ, who you just saw towards the end of the compilation. Sybil and Russ from Flexible Films, who co-produced the film My Fight for Freedom with John. And many of you have already seen it, I think, since it was published in 2023. I'm very, very thankful for this film as well. It captures beautifully and powerfully what John's life, his passion, and his goals were about. And we thought it had to feature today, although we're only going to show you the 5-minute version of the film. So if you could play that, Ines, please.
John made history when he moved into his own home in 1983. He was one of 5 disabled people who started the independent living movement in England.
In the late 1980s, we said, all we want is to live in an ordinary street with ordinary people in the local community. We wanted to live the life we thought was best, and we wanted to make the decisions about our lifestyle in the way we wanted. The principle is that any decision made about a disabled person should involve that disabled person. Nothing about it's without us. Because prior to independent living, major decisions made about the lives of disabled people were made by healthcare or social care professionals. I was always, in a sense, a bit of a rebel, or somebody who didn't always fit into the usual norm, and sometimes I felt quite different from some of my fellow school friends and peers in terms of my passions and my likes, my interests. I found a Sufi group in London where I studied really until I broke my neck. And that Sufi approach transformed my life. It was a group of us. We ended up going to New Mexico, so we would build our own places to live. And 4 months into that project, I went to an Indian ceremony in Arizona. And when I returned, I started doing exercises in the morning, like I did a lot of the time, but I was basically just tired and didn't have the concentration levels I should have had, and consequently broke my neck. Freedom was a very important part of my life, and going into a residential home just represented imprisonment to me. And then I managed to meet a few other residents there who thought similarly to me. And then we decided to set up Project 81, because 1981 was designated as the United Nations Year for Disabled People. And we thought that would be a good way of making publicity about what we wanted to do. So in 1983, everything I'd been working for, or we had been working for, became reality. moved out, moved into this flat, just felt so uplifted. But it was like that was another beginning, because then that was the beginning for us trying to develop independent living. It was a lot of hard work and a lot of passion. We had a major demonstration in 1988 called Rights Not Charity. In 1989, 6 of us from the UK joined together with over 80 other severely disabled people, all living independently from about 18 different countries. And that's where we formed the European Network of Independent Living. In 2007, the UN came out with the United Nations Commission to protect the rights of disabled people. And I think we've come complete circle now. And there's something called co-production. And I think that's the future of independent living, the future of disabled people's rights. As I'm getting older, I'm slowly withdrawing from all the political activities. I need to spend more time with Jana, my wife.
Right. 40 years and counting.
Okay, so we have almost come to the end of this very moving event for John. So before I hand back over to Jana to close, I just wanted to thank Jana first of all for working together and putting this together. I think we are both relieved it's worked well and we had no technical issues. I also want to thank Gerry, our sign language interpreter, who also knew John. And I wanted to thank Christos again for the wonderful video he's put together. So I know we will all think about John and remember John forever. So on this note, I hand over to Jana to close and still do one little piece.
Yeah, so also from me, thank you so much for attending, for contributing, Gerry for signing, and especially to you, Ines and Christos, for working on this with me. I really appreciate it, and I'm just glad that we managed to do it, and and I think with all the lovely contributions from everyone, I think it's been a very special event. So I would like to point out again that there are more tributes on the memorial website for John. I think Christos put the link in the chat earlier, and it's also going to appear towards the end of this. So if you just stay on after the last bit for a moment, and then you can, I think, see the link again to the website. We will also put up the video compilation that Christos put together with all your short tributes on YouTube. And at some point, a recording of this event. I'm not really sure how long this is going to take us to manage to get that online, but the links will also be available on that website then once we know about them. So I think it has been a very special event. I am very sure that John would have loved it. He would have loved what you said about him. He would have loved how many people have attended, and he would have just liked the entire idea of celebrating independent living. So so thank you all for joining in and doing your part in it. We wanted to end this event with some words from John himself. And we found this speech that he gave in Athens in January 2003, so 23 years ago, almost exactly. at the official launch of the European Year of Disabled People. So here's what he said. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why have I devoted my life to being a disability rights campaigner, advocating independent living in particular? It is because I strongly believe in the right of every disabled person to be included in society like everybody else, and to be able to have the same equal opportunities and chances as most people take for granted. Disabled people for far too long have been excluded and denied such opportunities. This is why we need to be empowered and to be enabled to live independently, in control of our lives and able to make our own choices. The importance of this was made clear to me when for 5 years of my life, I had my freedom taken away from me and my life was in the hands and control of others. Yes, whether I liked it or not, I had to live in an institution, because at this time, there were no other choices or alternatives. This experience of living in an institution is what inspired me to fight and devote my life to finding an alternative. This alternative is independent living. Such freedom of spirit is born from removing the chains of imprisonment. This kind of experience is unforgettable and enough to fire me up in our fight for freedom. Independent living has not only allowed me and other disabled people our ability to regain our freedom and to be able to live in our own homes and not in institutions, but also enabled us to find meaning in life and, more importantly, real status through paid employment. I was not able to do this alone. Independent living is the cooperation, networking, and collective working together of disabled people in order to be able to achieve our ultimate goals of being included in society. Throughout this whole process, it is disabled people who created independent living, developed and guided it, and will continue to do so. Independent living has provided us with a philosophy and practice of life. We still have some way to go, and independent living has to be recognized as a basic human right, and politicians everywhere have to support it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, John. Goodbye.
This event took place on the 13th of January, 2026, to remember and celebrate the life and work of disability rights campaigner and independent living pioneer John Evans OBE. 25th of May, 1950, 13th of January, 2025. Copyright ENIL and Jana Bleckmann-Evans, 2026.